Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Financial Aid Wednesdays. Today is Wednesday, November the 10th, and we're now in the middle of the financial aid season. There are a lot of families going after financial aid that have seniors who are applying to colleges, and I'm getting a lot of questions. I'm also getting a lot of panicked parents, and I'm here doing these Facebook Lives every Wednesday to help you find more money to pay for college, making it more affordable. And one way we do that is by finding more financial aid and more money to pay for college. And the other way we do this is by avoiding some of the most common and most expensive mistakes that families make on the way to college that end up costing them lost financial aid. And so, uh, every Wednesday, I take one of those big topics apart. And that's going to help you either find money by doing all of the right things at the right time so you can get all the money that you are like, eligible for and should get, but also how to avoid making mistakes. And on this episode, I want to talk about one of the biggest mistakes that I see families make. And it's actually not so much a mistake as it is a trap. Um, it's a big and it's an expensive trap. Now, I should say that our financial aid system is complex enough and it's riddled with a bunch of these little traps that families fall into. And if you've ever heard my personal story, then, well, you probably already know that I made almost every one of those mistakes and I fell into almost every one of those traps because I didn't know. I didn't have any guidance. I didn't have any help. I just kind of navigated this on my own. My parents were super busy, couldn't help. And only in hindsight, when I became a financial aid advisor, did I realize how many mistakes I made. And then also how many mistakes people continue to make to this day that are all the same. So, the biggest trap that is now a big threat to a lot of parents, I should say a lot of families and their kids as well, is not even coming from the financial aid system. Unfortunately, it's coming from the very people that you often turn to for help. So, yes, I am calling you out. If you're a so called financial aid advisor, just kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, but you're not a financial aid advisor. In fact, uh, I call you a financial aid charlatan because that is, unfortunately, what these folks are. And they're smooth talking, convincing. They sound great. There's bells and whistles. And at the end of the day, they profit, and families that come to them looking for help end up losing. So when I actually was looking up for the right word to call them, I kind of had to look up, is charlatan the right word? Well, as it turns out, it is. Check this out. A charlatan is a person practicing quackery or a similar confidence trick in order to obtain money, fame, or other advantages through pretense or deception. Um, they're also shysters, quacks, and fakers. Well, guess what? They are. And I'm going to tell you how to spot them. But, more importantly, I'm going to tell you why they're so dangerous and how to spot them. Because if you know what to look for, you'll figure them out right away and don't waste any more time going after it. And more importantly, like why you should avoid them. I'll talk about that in a minute. But also want to mention that for those of you joining us live, or if you're watching a replay, if you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. I see there are a couple of folks watching right now. So if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you want to like me to talk more about something, that's what I'm here for. It's to help all of you. So the reason this kind of topic even came to mind is because I was just talking to somebody 2 days ago. They heard me speak somewhere and they reached out by email and said, "Hey, I've got a question. I really want to get another opinion." And then when we spoke, she said, I went to this college night, and I think it was this virtual college night. And the person that was there was talking about financial aid, how hard it is to get, and he proposed a strategy to help families basically shift and hide their assets as a way of qualifying for more financial aid. And she said, I kind of felt a little icky when I heard that because it kind of put me off. Because then anytime somebody says we're going to help you hide money, especially when it comes to hiding money from the government, you kind of get this general instinct that maybe something isn't perfectly kosher here. And so she got that instinct, but she kept listening and she stayed through it. I think they might have had another consult. And in the end, this financial aid, quote unquote, expert who was supposed to help all these families basically proposed that they take all of their savings and move them into a life insurance policy. And she's like, wow, another alarm went off in her mind to say that, "Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to put your eggs in one basket. Like, doesn't matter what that basket is. Like, that long standing truth is true. You generally never want to put all of your eggs in any basket, no matter how great it's supposed to be." So, anyways, long story short, she said, "Yeah, this just doesn't feel right. I don't know why. I don't know exactly whether he's saying the truth or not, but it doesn't feel right." So they walked away and they found somebody else. And unfortunately, that next person, while an expert, was only focused in a really narrow area of the financial aid space. And they got some better advice, but it still didn't help her make the right decisions, or at least feel like she's making all the right decisions and looking at all the options. And so that's when she reached out to me. And that's when we just had this conversation 3 days ago or 2 days ago. Excuse me. Anyways, I offered her a free consultation. And by the way, for any of you watching this, I do this for everybody. You've got a 15-minute complimentary consult. If you want to run something by me, if you want to talk about your personal situation, or if you just want a second opinion or get some guidance, let me know. Just drop your comments below, say consult please or free consult, and I'll send you a link. You can book it directly on my calendar and you'll get 15 minutes one-on-one uninterrupted time, and I'll do my best to help you. Anyways, long story short, so she books this call, we have this conversation, and she says, you know, in the last 15 minutes, I feel like I got more help and more value than in all the hours that I had spent with the other two people, which, yeah, I got to be honest, made me feel really good. And it was flattering and I appreciated it and I thanked her for it. But I also was incredibly curious who these people were that she was referring to, because this person happens to live in my area, close enough at least. And I said, "Well, who are these people? I wonder if I've run into them." And sure enough, the first name she mentioned definitely rung a bell. And it just like I could cringe inside because I know exactly what this guy's talking about. And it's wrong. Like the thing that he says sounds incredibly convincing. And I'll tell you why. But at the end of the day, it doesn't work. I mean, it does work for him. It doesn't work for the people that he's working or supposedly helping. So why do they do these things, right? The number one red flag that you should look out for is when someone says hide anything. There are definitely legal ways within the letter of the law. If you really truly understand the financial aid system, the FAFSA, the CSS profile, there's certainly ways for you to reposition some of your finances, organize them in a more financial aid friendly way. That's actually one of the first things we teach people. You should do that because the financial aid system counts different money in different ways. And if you have money that obviously is sitting in different places under your name or in the name of your student or your parents, as the kid's grandparents, there's a way to make your financial structure more financial aid friendly. That's all good. But we don't hide things. This is not like this grand scheme that you're going to put money in the Cayman Islands or something. Like these people are basically saying hide your money in some product. That's the second red flag. Anytime somebody says hide, that's one. Product, that's two. You don't need products to shift your financial aid asset or finances to qualify for more financial aid. But anytime somebody says annuities or insurance, that should pretty much start ringing those alarm bells in the back of your mind. And here's why. So if you don't know, the EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. That's probably one of the most important terms for you to know. And if you've got a high school senior, you probably already know this. And if you have a younger student, you should know what this is. The EFC stands for the Expected Family Contribution. It's basically the minimum amount of money that colleges, actually the government, is going to expect you to pay for school. And it's based upon two things. It's based upon your income and your savings. And so the government is going to ask you to report all of your income and your savings on a financial aid form called the Fafsa. This isn't important right now, but the point is, some percentage of your income and some percentage of your savings are going to be counted toward your expected family contribution. So the more money you make, the more money you have, the more the government is going to expect you to pay for college. That's how it works. But here's the thing, the income counts generally at a much higher percentage. For very low income families, they're going to have literally zero of their income. I think anything under $26,000 of earned income, for the most part, depending on your age, is going to get sheltered automatically by the financial aid system. So you're not going to be expected to contribute anything from your income towards college. But as you go further up the earning scale, if you get closer to $200,000 for a household, you might end up be expected to pay upwards of 40, 45% of that income towards college. So numbers add up pretty quickly. The average tends to be around 20, 25%. So if an average household family, let's just say, is earning $100,000, it's very likely you'll be expected to pay about $20,000 out of that 100 for college. That's going to be your EFC. Well, savings count at a flat 5.64%, period. So it doesn't, stand like it's not very difficult math to do that an average of 20% that our income is counted at is more than the 5.64% that assets or savings are counted at. So two things that I want to mention. If you're a lower income family, like don't hide assets. You're not going to be expected to pay much anyways, but you probably can't afford to lock up your money in some insurance policy. And I'll tell you why that's a bad idea if you don't actually need the insurance, but it's never a good idea to take all of your money and throw it in something, especially if it's going to get locked up, which it will. And if you're a higher income family, don't hide your assets because it's not going to help you. Most of your expected contribution is driven by your income. And you can't hide your income unless you quit your job or, stop getting paid. So it doesn't work at the end of the day. It doesn't work for lower income families because their EFC would be low anyways. And you can't really afford to, like, you don't have the cash to pay for college. Why would you then turn all this money over to the insurance company to not see it for many, many, many years? I mean, life doesn't work in a straight line. Things happen. You might need that money. Well, if it's locked up, it's going to be really hard to get back. And if you're higher income, just don't even waste your money and waste your time because most of your EFC is coming from your income. Remember, your income is going to be counted upwards of 40% if you're on the higher income scale. Believe me, let me share something with you. Give me just a quick second. By the way, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. But here is an income scale. So check this out. This shows you the income scale from like 50,000 all the way up to 150. It technically should continue growing, but you'll see that the average family between, like that I mentioned, about 100 to $220,000 will be expected to contribute 20% of that money towards college. Now look, that's before you pay taxes. So, on $100,000 family income, you probably will lose 20% of taxes anyway, so you'll be left with 80, and you'll be expected to pay an extra 20,000 from that or 15,000 from that towards college. So these numbers really add up. And that's why what we teach people is how to like properly organize your finances and then find colleges that actually give you the money, find merit scholarships, find tax savings. There's so many different things you can do to actually find money. And I'm going to show you now why putting that money into the insurance thing doesn't work. Actually, you know what? I'll share it with you now. So the biggest problems with insurance, and I don't see, there it is. Number one, I already mentioned this. Your savings count less than your income, right? So worry about the income part first. But why do these so-called financial aid advisors recommend insurance or annuities? Well, that's because the FAFSA doesn't count five assets. Number one, it doesn't look or count the value of your retirement savings. Doesn't matter how much money you have in a 401k or in an IRA, that money is exempt. It's excluded. Don't report it. The colleges don't even, or the financial aid system doesn't want to count that money towards your expected contribution. So that's number one. Number two, it's the insurance, like cash value life insurance is completely excluded. You get to keep that and it's not counted towards your expected contribution for college. Number three, home equity. If you own in and you live in the primary residence that you own, you don't have to report the equity or the value of your home. Um, doesn't count. Number three, value of a small business if you employ less than 100 employees. So if that's you, don't report the value of your business. Uh, Less than 100 employees doesn't count. And then number five are personal assets. These are things like, jewelry, furniture, if you've got cars, it doesn't matter. Even a boat, like that doesn't count towards your expected family contribution. And so some of these folks will go out and say, put your money into a life insurance policy so the financial aid system won't look at it. And unfortunately, that's not a great thing for you. I've already mentioned that it won't work, but here's the biggest reason. Life insurance comes at a cost. Like at the end of the day, you're buying an insurance policy. So they're high costs. Part of that high cost, especially on the very front end, are high commissions because insurance companies pay commissions at the front end to the person that sells it. So pick 20% of your money, 30% of the money that you invest can just go straight to the insurance company. And if you put in $100,000, and later, let's say within the next few weeks or months or even a year, you say, that wasn't the right thing for me to do. I want to get my money back. They're not going to give you all your money back because you would have already incurred that expense. Um, Hey, Annie, I see you put the free consult. I'll reach out to you. Thank you. And by the way, for anybody that wants a consult, feel free to let me know. Just drop free consult in the comments below, and we'll send you a link to book a complimentary 15-minute call. All right. So I see you've got a question. Hang on. Let me pause here 1 second. If you don't mind, I'm going to put your comment on the screen. Is that okay? Let's see. All right. So here's a question. Would you recommend putting a small portion of savings account into an IRA? Um, yeah, I mean, if you can do that, absolutely. Uh, that's a good idea. I mean, you're limited by $6,500 a year limit, and if you qualify and if you're able to do it, by all means. Usually, it has to be done before year end, right? Because it's a pre-tax account, but the contribution itself, you know, the, they're going to add back if you're taking a tax deduction. But if you're making, a contribution to a Roth IRA, and you're taking, let's say, up to $6,500 from a savings account and you're putting it into a Roth IRA, you're not getting a tax benefit. So it gets completely hidden from the financial aid system within the letter of the law. So that's a really good idea to do. Good question. All right, so let's go back. And I was saying how expensive these things can be. So look, if you need insurance and like you happen to realize that this is the time to buy it, by all means go and buy it. But don't buy it because you're trying to hide assets. It won't work. And you're going to lose money on it. You're going to lose more than you're going to save on your EFC. And like 99 times out of 100, that's the case. So high cost, high commission. I've already talked about this in a way, but they have high surrender fees. And they usually last for 10 to 15 years, depending on the company, depending on the product, but that's the average. So, which means that whatever amount you put into this thing, you kind of have to be in it for the long haul. Because if you're going to try to get your money out anytime in the first 10 to 15 years, you won't get all of your money back. So you might as well just keep it in your bank, keep it in your investments, let them grow. And yes, you have to report it. So report it. And 5.5% of that money will be counted towards your EFC. But at least you're not doing anything illegal. You're keeping access to your money and you can invest that money far better so it grows. And then in the future, it'll be worth more. I've got another question. All right, good. Annie, you're welcome. All right, number 4. I've already talked about this. Long term. Years ago, there was this life insurance legend by the name of Ben Feldman. And he used to sell millions of dollars worth of life insurance. And he did it with a very simple illustration. I mean, he was a very smart man. By all means, I don't mean to diminish his expertise because he truly was a life insurance expert. He really, really understood and knew exactly how the thing works. But he used to explain it in a very simple way. He would draw two buckets, like simple little buckets, right? And on one bucket, he would write 10%. On the second bucket, he would write 5% or something like that. But on that second bucket, where it said 5%, he would also draw a lock. And then he would say, imagine you have monthly contributions that you're dumping into these two buckets. The first bucket is going to earn 10% interest every single year on every dollar that you put in there. The second bucket is only going to earn half the interest, like 5%. But that second bucket has a lock on it. You can't take the money out for many, many years. 20 years later, which bucket will have more money? The bucket that earns higher interest or the bucket that earns less interest, but you can't take it out for 20 years? And he said that given the human temptation, you will have more money in the second bucket, despite the fact that it earns less, but you can't touch it. And, we're humans. We're going to take money if we want to really get something because that immediate gratification part of us says, I want something, and you're going to take money out. But if you can't, then it's stuck. It's locked up. And that's how life insurance works. It's a great long-term savings tool. I have nothing against insurance. And for those of you who might say, "Oh, Roman is just, anti-insurance. He hates it and, that he's got a bias." I don't. One of the companies that I run, we advise families on life insurance. So I love insurance for the right purpose. I own a bunch of it. But it's there because if I died, my family is going to be in a tough spot because they're not going to have the income that I generate. So that's why I have the insurance. And yes, I have some permanent insurance that I expect one day will, either go to the kids, hopefully many, many, many years from now. But it's also money that I could use potentially down the road. I actually started my business from money that I saved in my life insurance policy. So I like insurance. I've got nothing against it. But if you've been following my videos, and I've been doing them for a long, long time, and before COVID, I used to do a lot of public speaking to, high schools and groups of families. Ask me how many times I talked about life insurance as a way of hiding money to, qualify for more financial aid. Zero, because that's not what this thing is for. It's a tool. It's a great tool, but it's not a college planning tool. It's not a financial aid planning tool. So if somebody tells you, put your money into a life insurance policy to hide your assets and qualify for more financial aid, run away. Won't work for you. It'll only work for them because they're going to make a nice little commission from it. And it's ultimately going to lock up your money. So don't do it. Instead, just check out these 4 areas that have a lot of money. That's what we teach people. There's need-based financial aid based on your family finances. There's merit financial aid based upon your kids' personal accomplishments. They don't have to be rocket scientists. They don't have to be the star quarterback. There are a lot of really great schools around the country that have money that they will use to incentivize your student to go there because they're looking for a really diverse, great incoming freshman class. Uh, that's what's going to help you. Number 3, there are outside private scholarships. If you're a higher income earning family that doesn't qualify for need-based financial aid, don't hide your assets. Go and find scholarships. You'll spend less time and get more money and keep your money that you have for what it's intended for, to take care of emergencies if you've got cash set aside, take care of your retirement if it's invested, take care of other things. Use your money, use it wisely, but don't lock it up. And then last but not least, the government actually has a lot of tax incentives. If you're a lower income family and you're paying for college, they have tax credits for that. If you're a higher income family, there's a lot of things you can do to save money on taxes. At the end of the day, it's not financial aid, but it's money that goes in your pocket that you can use to then pay for college. Because yes, we all know colleges are tremendously expensive, unreasonably expensive, and they've gone up in price far faster than our incomes have. So it's not a surprise that almost all of us have not been able to save. as much money as we need to send our kids to college. It's not your fault. You're in company of millions of families around the country that cannot comfortably afford to send their kids to these schools. So that's why we do these financial aid talks. That's why we have the classes. So if you need help, just let us know. Let me just quickly check. Um, Now, there's another question that just came in. That's good. Do you deduct your living expenses off your reported income first? I wish we could. I really do. I think the financial aid system would have worked a lot better, would have been a heck of a lot more accurate, and it would make sense if it did that. Unfortunately, they don't let us do that. So they're just looking at your top line income. It's like your W 2, it's whatever you made. They don't consider any of your living expenses whatsoever. They don't consider like your cost of living, if you're paying rent or if you've got mortgage, if you're paying for insurance, utilities, food, none of that. There's a little bit of money that the government lets you withhold. So it's basically called an income allowance. And you can look it up on the FAFSA form. Maybe one day I'll do a talk on it, but it basically is some amount of your income that the government says you get to exclude from calculating your EFC based upon the age of the oldest parent. And it's 20 some $1,000s. It's not a tremendous amount, but it certainly helps. But it doesn't let you actually deduct personal expenses, which really hurts those families living in high cost of living areas like either of the two coasts and or close to any large city, especially now with housing prices just going through the roof in most places around the country. If you have to pay high rent or high mortgage, they don't care. So unfortunately, that's why a lot of people fall sort of the victims to these really compelling sounding strategies of how to qualify for financial aid, but just don't do it. It's usually not the right thing to do. And if you need the insurance, by all means, go get it. And it might even help you a little bit with financial aid, but don't do it because and only because you're trying to qualify for financial aid. It generally just doesn't work. Um, if you want, I can share something with you. If you've got a few extra minutes, I want to share um, how you can figure this out for yourselves. Here, let me go. Give me just a quick second, and I'll share a really, really helpful website with you. And that is collegeboard.org. So go to collegeboard.org if you want to estimate your own expected family contribution. It's very, very simple to use. I'm going to give you an example right now, and I'll even show you why it doesn't make sense to hide your assets, aside from the fact that it never makes sense to hide your assets. So in the upper right-hand corner, and this is absolutely free. You don't even have to log in or create an account. Just in the search, put EFC calculator. Realized it's hard for me to talk and type at the same time. Ah, hang on a second. Oh, there it is. EFC. So find a. You know what? Let me just sign out and pretend that I'm doing this from scratch. There you go. So if you put EFC or expected family contribution, right here is the calculator. Click on that. It's going to ask you. Click start. It's going to ask you a series of questions. This is just to determine whether your student is going to be considered a dependent of yours or an independent. So for most families, their student is going to be a dependent, which means that you as the parent or a custodian will have to report your finances on the financial aid forms. If your student is an independent, then you don't have to report your finances. It'll just be your student. So again, for most families, all of these will be no, and your student will be considered a dependent. I always recommend you select this third option. So the federal methodology is what the government uses to calculate your EFC. That's what the FAFSA is for. The institutional methodology is what private colleges use to calculate an equivalent EFC to make you eligible for their financial aid from their own reserves, from their own endowment money. And they use the CSS profile as the financial aid form that they're going to ask you to complete. And so, since I don't know if your students are going to be applying to colleges that just use the FAFSA or just use the CSS, a lot of colleges use both. So let's just calculate both. Click next. And I'll just do a very simple four family household, say two parents, two kids, and let's say they live in California. Let's say our student is 18, they're a high school senior. Let's say dad is 50, not in college. Let's say mom is 48, not in college. And let's say we also have a brother or a sister who's a couple of years younger. Let's say they're 15 years old, they're not in college. Click next. And it's going to ask for your income. Your adjusted gross income, you can find in your tax return. You can also click this question and it will tell you how to find it. It tells you what form and what page on your tax return, but basically it's your taxable income. And so let's just say that this family earns $150,000. Student owns or earns, zero. Parent 1 makes 75,000 and parent 2 makes 75,000 as well. Again, student doesn't earn anything, no combat pay, no other untaxed benefits. I'm just going to again keep this pretty simple. No other income, no credits. They're not dislocated. And let's say they paid $25,000 in taxes last year. Okay. No child support, no extra medical or dental expenses. By the way, if you have those, the government will take that into consideration if they're unreimbursed. And your student hasn't received any financial aid yet, so that's zero. And now the final section is about your savings, your assets. So let's say the family has $50,000 set aside in the bank. Siblings don't have anything. Let's say home equity, I don't know, let's say you have $300,000 in home equity. Again, government doesn't care, just some private colleges do. And no other real estate, no business, no farm. All right, actually, I'm going to change this. Let's say that you actually have $200,000 or $150,000. You have $50,000 in the bank and $100,000 in investments. So let's see the results. Voila. So this tells you right here that the federal methodology, which is what the Fafsa uses, will expect you to pay $32,850 out of your pocket. Again, for most families in this example that earn $150,000 a year, considering they pay taxes, they've got living expenses, they've got other obligations, it's hard to come up with $33,000 per year. Times 4, that's $120,000 out of your pocket. The family only has $150,000 in savings, 50 in cash, 100,000 investments. Basically, the government expects you to pay all of that. Probably not very reasonable. The the institutional methodology, that's what the CSS profile is for. They think you should be able to pay 37,419. Equally unreasonable. But it is what it is. That's why we teach families how to lower that number legally without, violating and hiding assets and doing things like that. Now, I want to go back and show you an example. What if you went to one of these, workshops and this so-called financial aid expert said, "Aha, but I can help you save all this money. All you need to do is just put your money into this thing." Later, they'll tell you that it's life insurance. And they're saying, let's just put 100,000 that you have in investments into this thing, and it's going to help you qualify for more financial aid. All right, well, let's see. Let's go back, and instead of 150,000, we're going to take $100,000 away, and we're going to, that's income right here in assets. We're going to take $100,000 completely off the table, and we're going to put it into a life insurance policy. Let's pretend for a moment that colleges are not going to ask you to verify anything. So they won't catch that you did this, right? Because if they did, this would be disqualified and disallowed. And they'll say, nah, nice try. Doesn't work. You had $150,000 in investments 6 months ago. All of a sudden, right before college, it's gone. Something's fishy. So unless you can really prove that you did this for a reason other than shifting assets to hide it from them, they're going to count it right back. So that's one of the reasons I say don't do it. But anyways, let's say you did it and let's say it worked. They didn't ask you to comply to provide any proof. You only have $50,000 now. Let's recalculate. You'll notice that your expected family contribution went down by exactly $5,640. Because, like I said earlier, assets count at 5.64% for the Fafsa. Well, the institutional methodology counts assets at a flat 5%. So you saved $5,000. Well, 5,000 bucks in savings is nothing to sneeze at. And that's considering every year. So over 4 years you could have saved $20,000. So, maybe they had a point. But let's think, is it really a good deal? Because that 100,000 is now locked up. It's now in an insurance policy that has high costs, high commissions, high fees, and high surrender charges. So if you want to get your money out because you had an emergency and you need that money, you're not going to get all the money back. In fact, I would venture to say almost in every single case, you would lose more than what you saved by, getting a lower EFC. What if something else changed? What if everything is fine? You get through college, no emergencies, knock on wood, everybody is well, healthy, you've got other money coming in, and now 20 years go by. You're 70 years old. Let me actually stop the screen because I think it proves the point. Let's say time went by and now you say, gosh, I remember this guy telling me, or this gal, that this money that I put into this insurance policy is going to grow in value and I'm going to take it out tax free for retirement. Woohoo, this is all great. Well, is it? Because the fact of the matter is, unless they change the law, which I don't think they will, you are going to be able to take that money out and it should not be taxed at all, which is good. So if that's why you're doing it, do it. But it usually doesn't really work with college. Again, here's why. If you had that same $100,000 just invested in a regular S&P 500 index fund at Vanguard that costs virtually zero, and you had it for 20 years, you'll have, I would almost bet anything on it. I'm not a betting man, but I've seen enough of these illustrations over the last 21 years. And, we do investments, we do planning, financial planning. Like I know these figures, we've looked at them so many times. But if you just did that in a regular, bought one S&P 500 fund, you put your money in there, and I'm not telling you that you should do this, but I'm giving you an example. But if you did that for the next 20 years, and the next 20 years in the stock market resembled the last 20 years, then it's fair to say that your money is going to grow close to 4 times. So you put in 100, you will have close to $400,000. You will not, in any way possible, have the same amount of money in a life insurance policy. Why? Because insurance policies cost money. Every month, they're deducting money for you to actually have the insurance. So, yes, there is an investment component. Yes, it's going to grow with interest. Yes, you'll have more money down the road, but you're not going to have more money. So, I don't see a reason that you should do this. Again, I'm not giving you financial advice. I can't. I don't know you guys and who's on the call. That's what my offer there is for. If you want to have a private consult, by all means, book it, and I'll dive into more of your personal finances to help you kind of pick that direction. But generally speaking, it doesn't work. Not for you, at least. It works for the person selling the policy. So when you hear them say this, just walk away. Save your time, save your money, save your mental energy for things that'll actually help and work for you. I see there's another question that came in. Give me a second. What if you do your FAFSA and then a month later you receive an inheritance? So you have to tell them that there is a change. Wendy, that's a great question. So if you've submitted the FAFSA and colleges download that data automatically, and then something changes in your finances, like receiving an inheritance. Technically, you're not supposed to change that. You don't have to. Next year, of course, when you apply for the FAFSA again, if that inheritance is sitting in your bank or in some investment, then it will show up. And if it's the FAFSA-based formula, it will count 5.64% of the money that you have left from that inheritance, and it will be added to your expected family contribution for next year. But in this case, if it's a month later, you're not obligated to disclose it. So that for a year, it doesn't count. So good question. And you know what? I want to mention something on the other end of that question, which is, what if your financial situation changes for the worse, not for the better? You're welcome, Wendy. What if your situation changes for the worst? What if you submitted the FAFSA and something happened? Maybe you had an unexpected expense. Usually, again, because assets count less than income, for most families, like the biggest financial change that can happen is loss of income or reduction in income. What if that happened? What do you do then? Well, it's to your benefit, it's in your advantage to then reach out to colleges and let them know that there was a significant change in your finances and the figures that they are looking at are no longer accurate. They're no longer reflect your financial ability to pay for college. Now, it's also worth noting it doesn't just have to happen after you fill out the FAFSA. Remember, the FAFSA is going to look at your income from 2 years prior. So, for all senior families who are applying for financial aid right now for their kids' first freshman year of college, assuming they're going to graduate this spring and they're going to go to college in the fall of 2022, then the FAFSA is going to ask at your or to look at your income from 2020, 2 years prior. What if in 2020 your income was higher than it is in 2021 right now as you're filling out these forms? Well, you should definitely let colleges know that they are not looking at the right data. Now, on the other side, if you've made more money, good for you. You don't have to tell them, you don't have to brag. It's going to come up in your next year's filing. So it'll catch up, but take the savings where you can. And I just mentioned this earlier. If you're just watching this section, there are four main areas where you can find money. There's need based financial aid that's driven entirely by your EFC, and most of your EFC is driven by income. So manage that. Don't worry so much about savings. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't do anything about it. You should still plan ahead. And if you can, position your finances to be more financial aid friendly. Don't over report, don't overshare the value of your savings. Only report what is required, not any more than that. The second is merit aid. That's for your students, for their academic, athletic, personal accomplishments, volunteering accomplishments, or just because of their personal profile, where they live, where they're coming from, what they're going to study. These things, are that's what the money's there for. It's private scholarships. There's a tremendous amount of money in private scholarships. You can go get it. And then tax savings. So we developed a simple to remember 4-step formula. Plan. P stands for prepare and organize your finances in the most financial aid friendly way. L stands for look for colleges with good financial aid policies that will actually give you the money that you're eligible for. A stands for apply. Apply correctly and apply early. Apply on time because financial aid is given out on a first come, first serve basis, and you want to apply and get yourself in line for the best financial aid early. And then number 4, N stands for negotiate. The first financial aid offer you're going to get is hardly their first or final offer, and it's usually not their best offer. It's just the first. And so there are 4 different things that you can do to appeal for more financial aid. And so when you do these 4 things together, one at a time, that's where you collect the most amount of financial aid from all of these different sources. It doesn't just have to come from one place. In fact, it hardly ever does. That's unfortunately the challenge with our financial aid system. It does require some work. It's a little confusing, but if you know the simple steps to follow that work, no trickery, no shenanigans, no BS, just the simple things that work, do that. And you will gain more than you would have without having to worry and looking over your shoulder and wondering if the government's going to come down on you one day and say, "Why did you do that?" We don't want that. I mean, at the end of the day, don't lie to the government. If they bust you for it, I mean, aside from the fact that it's actually punishable, both in terms of fines, I don't think anyone's ever gone to jail unless you're really committing big fraud. But it's just, why do that? And especially not when you're getting it's for your kids. You're trying to get them started on the right foot in life. It's just not a good lesson to teach them. So I see there's another question came in. Is it better to have parent savings and student no savings? Yes, absolutely, Wendy. That's a great comment. Money set aside under your name as a parent is counted at 5.64% on the FAFSA. If the same money is in your student's name, it gets counted at 20% towards the expected family contribution. 5.64 under the parents, 20% under the kids. Certainly better to have savings in the name of the parent than in the name of the child if you're going after need-based financial aid and you're trying to lower your EFC. That's one of the ways that we tell families to restructure their assets, restructure their finances within the letter of the law, because this is going to help you lower your EFC. Thanks for mentioning that. It's a great comment. And yes. And what about sibling savings? I mean, the same thing. The FAFSA is going to actually ask for you to report not only the savings in your student's name who is actually applying for financial aid, but they'll also ask you to report any assets in the siblings' names, even if they're not applying for financial aid. It's kind of crazy, but that's what it is. So a lot of families will save money in their kids' 529 plans. For all of you watching, 529 plans where you as the parent are on the account, it's your asset. Don't report a 529 as your student's asset. That's a mistake. It's your asset, you report it. But if you have money in a 529 for a younger sibling, you have to report that as well, unfortunately. And it's the total value for all siblings that will have to be reported and counted towards your EFC, unfortunately. The good news is if you're applying to those private colleges that use the CSS profile, there you don't have to report your student or siblings' assets. You only report the assets of the student who is applying for financial aid. By the way, one other thing I want to mention, and speaking of plan, we have a lot of courses ranging from free checklists and ebooks that you can use to learn some of these basic foundational building blocks of the financial aid system, so you kind of know exactly how the thing works and you can make decisions based upon that. We also have courses that help walk you through the best things to do and how to prepare to get the most amount of financial aid starting when your kids are freshmen in high school. We have classes for sophomores, juniors on how to select the right colleges, and seniors how to complete the FAFSA and do it in the right way without making costly mistakes. So if you want that, just let us know, or go check out our website, pillar6college.com. I think we've got a free ebook that's available on, I think it's fafsadoneright.com. Somebody can please put that in the comments. I'd appreciate that. And as always, I do this every single week. Every Wednesday, come back 10 o'clock Pacific Standard, and I'm going to dive into some topic around financial aid to help you either find more money or avoid making mistakes that'll cost you money so you can make college more affordable. And there's always that offer. I mentioned it earlier. It's there for you again. If you want a complimentary consult, 15 minutes, absolutely free, help you kind of point in the right direction, get a second opinion, just drop free consult in the comments below and we'll send you a link. And I think that's it. That's all I have for you. I've held you longer than I usually do, but I just feel very, very strongly about this topic because, like I said, there are these folks who pretend to be experts in the financial aid. They pretend to help. And unfortunately, they're out there looking for themselves. And I do think that they're absolute charlatans. And I wish they would stop using financial aid and kind of the fear and the worry and the stress that parents feel as a way to motivate you to do things that you shouldn't do. But that's good for them, and it's unfortunate and it's sad, and don't let them get away with it. So do the things that that work. Be honest, no shenanigans. And if you feel inside like something doesn't make sense, if you have that sense that something's off, that's a really, really good sign to not do it. If you don't understand something, or if it kind of feels fishy, then just go away. Don't or walk away. Don't go away. Walk away from it, or go get a second opinion from somebody that you trust. And I'm sure that's going to help you make the right decision. So, uh, folks, I just want to say again, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. If you've got questions, drop them in the comments below, even if it's the replay. We'll continue to monitor this and get back to you. And if this is helpful, please hit like just so that I know that this is helping you. There's a thumbs up button. I think all of you are pros on Facebook, and feel free to share this with your friends if you found it to be helpful. And until the next time we talk, be well. All my best to you, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for watching again. Take care.